In lesson 6.2, we have two main objectives. We want to be able to find the inverse of a function or relation. And the second thing is we want to determine whether two functions or relations are inverses. So yesterday we spent a lot of time trying to get an intuitive nature of what an inverse function is. So we talked about the notation of inverses. So there's some language here that we need to know. When we see f to the negative 1 of x, that tells us we're supposed to find the inverse. We should have an intuitive sense that inverses will undo each other, but one does, the other one will undo. And the inverse function basically reverses your question. The other day we went through a really simple example. If we have a student name here, and we have their student ID, if our function is to assign a student to an ID number, we could put Ken in here, and Ken could be student ID number 1. We had Barbie or Barb. She could be a student number 2. We could put Joe in here, and Joe is student number 3. And we make these assignments. The function says take a student name and assign them to an ID. And that's what our function originally does. So Ken gets paired with ID 1, Barb with 2, and Joe with 3, and so on and so on. These things here are the inputs of our original function. And these ID numbers over here are the outputs of our original function. When we do an inverse function, we are going to undo what we did, or we're going to reverse the question. So rather than saying, if I tell you the student is Ken, then you tell me the ID, we're going to ask the question, I'm going to give you an ID, you go find the student that it corresponds to. So now we're going to put in our IDs of 01, 02, 03. So the things that used to be the outputs are now going to become the inputs into our inverse function. So this is going to be our inverse function idea. And our old inputs now become our new outputs. So in reverse this question, basically every XY ordered pair that's an input-output becomes a Y, X ordered pair. This is your original function, and this is your inverse of that function. So now it's going to come back and it's going to say, well, I still got the people that are Ken, Barb, and Joe. And if we ask the question, what if the ID number is 03, what student had the ID number 3? And we want to come back and give us Joe. And if I give you the ID of 2, that should bring back Barb, and 01 should be Ken. So that's the basic nature of our inverses that we're going to be working with. The very core concept is we're going to undo what the first function does, or did, and it takes our inputs and outputs and it switches their roles. So the input-output role that you see in the original function is going to be switched. And now the outputs from the first are going to be the inputs, and the inputs from the original become the outputs. So it's a reverse lookup or reverse role idea.